just trying to go and cast in my mind back to when I was an analyst kind of over 10 years ago. It's amazing how much it's changed because, there was one analyst at a club and that one analyst had to do everything, and set plays was just like a small bit that kind of was just one part of the job. And obviously now it's a full-time position. And it was one of them where, we just look at the corners from the few previous games, who takes the penalties, and maybe get the goalie coach in and just kind of have a word with the goalie, and this is how they play the ball in. So yeah, it's so much different. So do you, in terms of those, still on the relationship kind of thing then, Yannick, in terms of the players, obviously you've got to get the buy-in of the players with kind of them believing in what you're kind of working towards, but on a match day, for example, I'm just trying to, obviously are you on the bench on the match day? Are you in the stand? You're on the bench, okay. So is there kind of any issue kind of getting messages across the players on a match day? Is there someone is it the captain that you'd maybe trust more so to deliver, in terms of what on a game, if you need to make iterations during the game, how does that look basically?
We have a set piece captain that that looks more to the bench when he feels that something is wrong, and obviously the players know I'm there. If they feel, let's say, insecure about their positions, obviously everybody now knows what their task is within a specific position. But if they don't really know, or for some reason the opposition sets up differently, they tend to have a quick look to the bench if they can, and then it's just small communication, just like a coach. But obviously in the end it's the players that will adjust on their gut feeling, let's say.
Seppi's captain in, so is that separate to the actual team captain, and that's just his, is that different players? Okay, perfect.
It obviously depends on if for example our captain Jan Vertongen is obviously someone who communicates very well, but it's sometimes better to have someone else, because then you, from a natural perspective, you'll have two anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So, okay, so let's kind of talk. I wanted to ask you that split between attacking and defending. So, how much of your time is spent, if you had to split it, kind of whether it's 50-50 in terms of your attacking set plays and then obviously defending set plays? Is it equal, or do you spend more time on one of them? Okay, so if you've made it this far into the video, you must be enjoying the content. Either that, or you have simply fallen asleep. So whichever one of them it is, you probably won't mind me asking you for a quick favor. So as you know, I'm always looking to grow the channel. So the bigger the channel gets, the more people we can reach and impact, but also the bigger and better guests we can invite onto the channel to have these types of chats. So with that in mind, if you haven't already done so, I would very much appreciate it if you did hit the subscribe button down below the video. The stats are showing around 25% of viewers are subscribed. So there's a big chunk of you that are watching the videos, but you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, but I will let you off because you can do it right now. It's free and it literally takes 1 second. So if you go down, click the subscribe button, it would mean a lot to the channel and help the channel to grow. So that's all for now. Let's get back to the video.
I have to say I spend more time on the attacking than on the defensive, because at the moment, and I've seen teams doing it differently, so it opens a little discussion, but from a defensive perspective, we have our setup and we have our principles, and that doesn't really change. Now, compared to last season, we look a little bit more vulnerable. So it's definitely something to open a discussion, and I like to have these type of discussions with players. You can see as well, we conceded against Fenerbahce, and we conceded there as well. So we opened the discussion this week, and I said, listen, if there's anything you would want to change, what would it be? And then you come into two conversations with two different players, and one goes, I would like a zonal player extra, and the other one goes, I like to be more full man marking. So in the end, you can see that there's no right or wrong. It's just the preference of the player that sometimes decides what their feeling is, and you need to step away then and look at the bigger picture and tell, okay, listen, what are the profiles that we have? Why have we conceded that corner or that set piece? And then go from there, instead of looking, okay, shit, now we've done this or this wrong, so we need to adapt. While teams that, just like you would adapt your setup in open play to the specific weaknesses and strengths, it might be something you could do on defensive set pieces as well. But I feel that you will gain more in getting principles right, having clarified agreements on, okay, this is what we have to do in these and these certain situations, rather than changing it up every week based on the strengths of the opposition.
Yeah. So what is that kind of style? What would you mentioned kind of man marking, zone and stuff like that, Yannick? What is kind of you mentioned that defensive is pretty much set in stone somewhat. So how do you guys defend corners? What is your preferred method? Is it a mix of the two? Is it, do you do the mix? Okay. So just for those listening again, Yannick, so in terms of, can you just kind of break down maybe the pros and cons of zonal, then maybe zonal marking, in terms of the differences in how you might benefit from using that, but also why that might also be a downside as well?
Well, we have a mixed setup, and the reason for that is that we're not a very, very big team. Okay. So you can see for the likes of Manchester City, they go full zonal, and it makes a lot of sense if you look at their profiles as well. While then again, Arsenal changed actually this season to a near full man marking system. And again, also there it comes down to profiles. If you see how aggressive they are, how much intensity they have. So for us, I felt that a mixed setup where you have specific profiles, man marking specific players, not allowing them in key areas. And then you have those key areas occupied by your stronger players, let's say. That's a little bit the philosophy that we currently have. Yeah. And again, in that setup, there's no right or wrong. It's a little bit for me based on the player profiles that you have, and then obviously also on what players like to do, because you can have a very good header that doesn't really like to man mark. If you put that kind of situation, like maybe it's better than to have an extra zonal player. Yeah,
definitely. So I don't know the exact kind of stat, but I've heard it said many times in terms of the percentage of goals scored from set plays, whether it's around the kind of 30% mark or whatever. So I'm just kind of curious to ask how much time is spent training set plays. I'm sure it's probably nowhere near 30%, but in terms of that weekly on the grass time, like how much and are you delivering them sessions personally, Yannick? And basically how much time are you spending on the grass solely on set plays?
I try to push for a lot more, obviously. And with the games going back to back from Sunday to Thursday, it's very difficult even for the manager to get time on pitch. So and then again, it comes down to taking set pieces is also not good for injury rates and so on. So it's a constant battle between the manager, the medical staff, and then the set piece coach to get everything in. And you have to be obviously a little bit flexible in there. So when we cannot have time on the pitch, we try to use the time off the pitch through meetings, individual meetings, unit meetings, to get the understanding going. But to answer your question, in general, we have a match day minus one, obviously, where we try to implement the game plan for the next day, and that's preferably in a 10v10 in a match situation, where sometimes the players that are mimicking the opposition are not aware of what we actually going to do. To get the real match situation and to also have a little bit of the feeling of what will work or what might potentially not work. Obviously, you'll always have players with the opposition that are clever enough to know more or less already what we are going to do. That's already something as well that we try to do. We try to be as clear as possible, like against a man marking setup from the opposition. We would generally have more or less the same structure to follow and more or less the same approach.
Yeah,